to ourselves. A lot of times we spend a lot of time listening to the background noise. Divine Rising, blessed be to your day. On this beautiful moon day, we understand that today is the day that we invest into our change. Today is the day that we invest into the change. And I thought about a visualization. I made a post earlier. You can go look at that up. Go look that up. It's right under this video. But then I thought about this visualization in my mind of renewing old subscriptions, or that burn notice. Renewing old subscriptions to a new address. That means that trial period. We've all done it. Think about it. Every time that you said, "Oh, cool, I wanna renew my Spotify or my Netflix or my Hulu or I want to renew it, get another trial run at it because I really didn't get a chance to watch it the first time." I think about this every time that it's time to level up. It's time for us to level up in ourself, level up in our experience, level up in our mastery, learning ourselves, getting that mastery to ourselves. And instead of fully submitting to the process, a lot of times we will resubscribe or renew a subscription through a new address. So think about your life as a series of email addresses or identities that you created that all come with a different password, all come with a different security question, all go into the same phone number. You always put the same phone number in and they never really say anything. That's what I think about whenever in my earlier work with myself, my earlier internal work, when I would get to that point, when it's okay, I'm getting real nervous about making this jump, making this decision. Instead of me truly making the decision, I would call myself still subscribing to the old aspects of myself where I was comfortable and just writing up a new email address. Writing up a whole new email address. I went from Yahoo at cdmr187787 at yahoo.com to Hotmail prp787 at hotmail.com. I had like 3 or 4 different Yahoo accounts, 3 Gmail different accounts, and all these different accounts. And they will all be locked. This is before we had the smartphone thing. And then when I got my when we came into smartphones, all of that was synced into the one true aspect of myself where I was at the time. This is what happens a lot of times when we're in this state of renewing ourselves, and we have to realize, am I renewing just to create another identity or another address so I can stay within that space? See, this is why I can't go there now, because I have to deal with this. But we just keep creating different addresses. We just keep creating different addresses, go get a different number, and we're like, it's a new me, new year, new me. Here's the thing about that. Similar to that, just like when we go get a phone number, you go get a new phone number, and then you got the phone number a little bit, you gave certain people the number, no more people the number, but then all of a sudden the old numbers or the old people that had that number end up calling your phone, asking you about Mrs. Henry or John Taylor or whatever it is. So it's like, take that aspect of every time that you try to renew yourself in the same space to try to reinvent yourself, instead of really creating that new aspect of you, it's similar to that's what happens. So now, not only are you taking on the new address that you're giving yourself or another reason to stay in that space, but you're taking on all the thoughts that go with that space. You're taking on all the thoughts that go with that space. All the energy that goes on with that space. Instead of addressing your primary address. Your primary address has always been you. That first address has always been you. I remember my first real Gmail address, and I wanted it to be something real. I wanted it to be something based on my identity, so it seemed cool. But the more older that I became, or the more focused I became, it was like, I can't give that email address out to the professional sense, because it will be looked at and you can tell that it was timestamped. A lot of us like renewing these addresses, renewing these subscriptions, and they're timestamped. Every time you go into a new space, it's like, now that you're in this new sense of yourself, you're bringing yourself into this new space, and then you're looking at that old address that you got going on. There's always something in that space, and this is what I noticed. There's always something in that space that I can be the antagonist about. Just so I can stay within that space. So I can be like, yeah, I got a new year, new me. I don't do this, and this. But when I was approaching the external aspects of myself, new friendships, relationship, job, I approached them the same way as my primary address. I always approached them with the same primary thought. So I was only renewing the subscription that made me comfortable. I was only in renewal of the same subscriptions that made me comfortable. But when it came to, remember we always talk about this asset versus liability. When it came to me starting to be an asset, the conversation had to change with myself. That conversation changes with you. If you find yourself still, I don't know why I'm doing this, it's kind of fun. Y'all remember when we were little, we used to do this? The conversation had to change with myself first, so I can now build my new security question instead of using the same passwords and just flipping my password around. I always wonder how people still had access to me. It's because I was just switching things around. I was just moving things around. I wasn't really letting go of anything. I was simply letting things go that no longer served the emotional aspects of where I was at. But I still kept it in play. So just in case, because in my mind I was in a just in case, I don't get successful, or I don't have gratitude, or I don't come into my humility, or I don't come into it fully as I need it to be, as I need to see it. I always had something to fall back to. Today when I woke up getting ready for the gym, one of the coolest things happened. I was sitting here, like, I was led to meditate in the living room. Because usually I meditate in the bedroom. Peace, peace, and power, peace, and power. I usually meditate in the bedroom. As soon as I roll out of bed, meditate. Something told me to meditate down in front of one of my altars. One of the altars in the crib. I was like, so I'm sitting there, and for the first time, usually I do this echolocation. I do an echolocation visual when I meditate. So I'll say that I'm in gratitude, I'm grateful. I say that I'm in gratitude. I say that I'm successful. I say that I'm wealthy. I say that I'm healthy. And I go down this list of incantations. In between each incantation, I take a couple of deep breaths in, let a couple of breaths out. And then I wait for the echo. I wait for the echo to bounce off of something. So I'll say, I'm in gratitude. I'll take that deep breath in. I'm in gratitude. I'm grateful. And I sit there with myself after I've said it, and I let my mind wander. I let my mind go, and I want to see what it's going to hit on the way down into my subconscious, down into that depths of myself. And I said, I'm in gratitude, and nothing, it didn't hit anything. It just kept going back, and I heard it come back to me. That echolocation, it came back to me exactly as I spoke it. Now, before, when I started doing these aspects for myself and doing that internal work, and I would do that, I would say, I'm grateful, I'm in gratitude, I'm wealth, I'm health, and then all of a sudden, it would bounce off of something and it would come back as I'm hungry, or an anxiety, or something I needed to deal with, and it would come back to the surface as whatever it bounced off of. So it would come back as that. Something that I had to address. Something that I had to address. So for the first, I was like, wow, I really said my entire list of mantras, said my entire power list, and nothing came back distorted. Everything came back Papa Lucy said it. That's where you get at inside of yourself that's why you're doing your meditation. That's why I always say it's important to start with your meditation. What are you telling yourself? That conversation, that initial conversation that you have with yourself sets the tone for everything else. In a lot of our lives, it's time to activate those burn notices. You've been putting it off for this, you've been putting it off for that, instead of saying what needed to be said, putting yourself, renewing the subscription. Well, I've had this subscription for years and it never cost me anything. But now you want to advance in your emotional literacy, i.e. your financial literacy, i.e. your growth. That means the conversation has to change. That means it may be time for you to understand that it's time for me to accept that everything in my space is teaching me something before I can actually teach something. That was one of the greatest things that I had to learn for myself. Is like, before I came into the role that I'm in now, I had to understand that I had to accept that everything in my space was to teach me something. Everything that came into my space was to teach me something, bring me into clarity, bring me into focus. So I stopped avoiding and stopped creating new addresses. Those new addresses, that new residence, because I wasn't used to something being direct to me. So I took residency in wherever I was accepted. That was one of the biggest wounds for me, is being accepted. So I would always take this residency in where I was accepted at. So I sublease a little spot over here in the hills, or I sublease a little space over here by the water, or I sublease a little space over here in the city, or I sublease, and these are just examples of the energy that you put into those spaces. I would sublease myself out to everything. So at the end of the day, so it'd be like, when it came time for me to really sit there with myself, I could always have something, a reason why I couldn't do it. Oh, I can't do this because I got to do this and I got to do this. Instead of me actually having that conversation with myself, why do I give myself all of these things? Why do I feel the need for all of these things? Why do I feel like I need all of these things in my space at this time, in my purpose? Why do I keep subscribing to it? As I learned what I was subscribing to, it all had the same narrative: to make me feel good, to make me feel good, to make me feel like without this I wasn't doing something, or this was my excuse or residency of saying, well, I'm not this, or I'm not upset, I'm not lazy, I'm happy, I'm not this, I'm not what I was. But it all linked back to the same things. I'm not what I was when I started. And since in this space I can create something where I'm not what I was when I started, I'm going to keep this subscription. There's one thing that I learned, and still ongoing learning, is the true definition of energy doesn't lie. A lot of times we subscribe to, still because of that undercurrent of, ooh, we're accepted, we're being accepted because our inner child. Someone can say to me, oh, you've grown, I can see this change in you. And because I still had that I had that little inner child wound, those little wounds, the little residue on my heart chakra, I would be like, ooh, they notice my change, they notice my growth. That means I can keep. That means either I can keep or I can subscribe to them now. Here's the thing. It gave me a warm and fuzzy feeling. Here's the thing. The warm and fuzzy feeling is the removing of the impurities. The warm and fuzzy feeling that you get is the removing the impurities. When it comes into your true aspects of yourself, one thing that I learned in visualization is, I don't want the warmth. I want that shiver. I want that shiver to hit up my spine. Because that's when I know my energy's cycling. I want that little shiver. I want that little cold spot. I need that. because it's going to keep me from settling. That's what's going to keep me from settling, and now I can really start that new address for myself. When we're stuck in that, waiting for the heat, waiting for that heat, waiting for, ooh, it got hot, because we're used to that reaction. Ooh, it's hot. Ooh, it's hot. But I can stay in the heat. I can stay in the heat because that's the survival instinct to try to survive in the heat. To preserve my authenticity, I got to go into that coolness. My authenticity can be reserved in that coolness, where it's cool at. Because now I know I'm in a new space. Now I know I'm in the darkness. Now I know I'm in my dark. Now I know I'm creating in my dark. Remember the light, that heat, that's a projection. The longer that you stay in that light, that heat, that projection, that old aspect of yourself, the things that you're not addressing inside of that space overcreate that space. The things that are in the unseen that we do not deal with are what creates your space. Everything that is everything that comes up in the physical form is the experience or the result of that experience that we have not yet dealt with. Everything in your space is built based on your unseen. Really think about it. All the unseen aspects of the things you have not dealt with usually are the reason that you create your space. You don't create it based on what you dealt with. This is that switching aside from survival into becoming your authentic self. You're sitting there like, oh yeah, like I didn't get my new, I thought of, like, you go down the line, I didn't get my first crib because it was an honor to get my first crib. I got a first crib because of that echo of my mom telling me, yo, once you get your own house, you'll be grown. So that was an aspect of me being grown. So I needed to keep my mother in that space in order for me to feel grown. So I'd be like, so now I'm showing everybody my new spot, but I'm noticing everybody that I'm showing my new spot came from the old space. They were in, oh, damn, you got this, this, and this. And I was just feeding my inner child attention. Feeding my inner child attention. Then I felt myself having to keep that same momentum to keep giving my inner child that attention without addressing the undercurrent, and just kept recreating new residences inside of my space. Before you knew it, my space was full. I was constricted. So then it gave me the illusion that it's time for me to get to a new space. But as I said on Friday's lecture, what you take into that space are the things that you have to deal with. Everything in physical representation in your space that you take to the new space are the things you're going to have to deal with. It's not going to change just because you change the address, because you still got residence somewhere else. A lot of us have, our heart is in residence in so many other places that when it comes time to that direct current and flow in the current space that we're in, we can't really embrace it. A lot of us have residencies in other places, those other doors, sitting in front of those other doors. So when it comes time for us to fully adapt or fully become into this space of our now, we can't get to it because we still got something else we got to deal with. But we'll create another avenue or another address. Ooh, yeah, I just do this instead of that. And then all that does is keep our energy low. It keeps us in that guilt. It keeps us in that insecurity. It keeps feeding that old wound instead of acquiring that burn notice. One of the things that caused the biggest burn notice for me and for a lot of us in addressing things is the family feud. That's this week's God Hour podcast episode. We get into the family feud. Accepting that, understanding what the black sheep is, identities of the black sheep, and the black sheep is simply the wolf in sheep's clothing. Yes, you are the wolf in sheep's clothing. The things that you have been through, the things that happened to you, made you the wolf in sheep's clothing. Until you accept that beast, that animal, that monster inside of you, and you really do that work, you'll always try to be, yeah, I'm the black sheep of the family. They don't really fuck with me. Why? Because of this, and that. You always have a bias. And then that leads us into the aspects of our acknowledging that karmic debt. Your karmic debt that you got to establish makes you the black sheep. The things that you're dealing with of yourself makes you the black sheep of your family. That's why it's happening to you and nobody else. And then you understand the difference between familiar and family. There's a difference between being familiar or related based on the traumatic events and the secret, and then family being in support of dealing with that experience. But that's this week got our podcast episode. Episode 23, season 4. I desire you to be the best. I want you to be the best. It's time to really sit with yourself and see how many addresses you created. How many residencies that you have that are attached to your heart that you haven't dealt with yet. This is about real work. It's about really getting serious with yourself. You want something to be serious for you, but you're not serious with yourself. See how the correspondence goes with it? You want something to go in depth, but you ain't really going in that depth with yourself. That's why it doesn't work out. That's a lot of times why a lot of things don't work out is because maybe it's not supposed to be over there in that space to that old address. I want you to be the best. I desire you to be the best. Share. If you're interested within those services, book a consultation, book that reading, natal chart analysis, human design chart, all of those good things. You can hit me up at the inbox. I'm revamping the website. Revamping the website going to be something brand new and sparkly. So you hit me up in the inbox for now. Hit me in the inbox. Hit me in the DM. Hit me in the comments. Because I desire you to be the best. I love you. Invest in the changes because that contradiction is the answer to challenge your behavior. Challenge you, address you, become the best you. Be fucking great. I love you. We love us. I'll share.